Hi everyone, I'm Airier, and today we're going to be checking out Star Wars vs. Warhammer 40K. This is episode 16, Unexpected, from a fan with too much time. Now, last time around, I was told a certain Jedi died, and I'm just thinking, probably dead. But they only described an arm and a head tentacle being dead. So while she's probably dead, there's a chance Shaak Ti could be alive later if Fan wants to show her heavily battle damage and maybe take out of the fight for a later moment where he could save her without using her up. Because he has that option right now with how he described it. She's probably dead. If he wants to leave it that way, he could get away with that. But he could also, use her later. And I'm going to stand by that because that kind of description is such a great jump-in point if someone wants to use it later. And I love that it's there. More importantly, we're going to jump in today to the unexpected. So I'm going to take a wild guess and not expect what's about to happen. I know, me not getting excited. What a surprise. More importantly, there's a link below to the original video. Hit it up and let's get started. Is that blaster shots? Yep, that's blasters. Ooh, I like how the sound is cutting in well before anything else. Showing that we're jumping right into the action. Nice. Oh, and all the words are fading in at once. I'd want to always highlight that because sometimes he doesn't do that. This is definitely a preference on my end. Also, I'm a big fan of just Star Wars black and white colorations there. Episode 16, don't do individual letters, fan. No, the unexpected, and I don't recognize that text font. Almost looks Blade-esque. I don't know why I'm going Blade on that one. Never even watched the movie. I know about it. Yeah. It's the red.
Master Ayla had never allowed herself to go this
right into
far.
Ayla.
She swung to the left, saber drawing striking
Like I said,
lines
right
of
into
blue
action.
in the air. The luminous weapon took the lives of 3 men, melting straight through the whirring chainsword the first of them raised in defense. His face was a mask of frenzy and disbelief as he was neatly bisected despite the integrity of his parry. The bladed chain of the weapon went whipping out wildly, cutting the man's face and red cap in half, while Ayla smoothly spun to the left, evading the bits that came flying out at her. She twisted in the air, carried farther than was natural on winds pulled into reality by the power of the Force, and landed in
Space
a
magic,
crouch
gotta love it.
nearby, sweeping her saber back to the right in the process, taking the heads of 2 more Imperial soldiers as she landed. The Jedi Master thrust her free hand out, pushing the headless bodies forward into a cluster of nearby soldiers who were preparing to volley fire into her. They only managed a few sloppy shots before the corpses landed nearby, the glowing blue coils of their guns flaring to life in a horrible display of screaming and death.
Oh, so the gun overloaded. Okay. Must have been a, plasma weapon? Yeah. Also, someone mentioned exactly what happens when you have something as hot as a lightsaber in a body. Because apparently, in the very first time you see a lightsaber used in the cantina scene in A New Hope, there's blood. And then later on, I was thinking more of the prequels where it was just solid burning. And, some people who might get mauled who get cut in half and survive that because it cauterizes immediately. Then a lot of people with extreme detail in the comments decided to point out, yeah, no, this would literally boil and rupture cells explosively. Think popping meat balloons. Yeah, okay, I'm not going to say anything else about Fan interpreting this weird because it's basically up to rule of cool because reality is way more disturbing. And let's never talk about it again, please.
Composed of blue fire and terrible force, the Imperial soldiers were eradicated by their own unstable weapons.
Yeah,
Though,
that's par for the course,
oddly,
actually.
The guns themselves seemed more or less intact afterwards.
Really?
Ayla had rarely fought with this much lethal skill, and never against living opponents. Only in combat with droids did she do what she was doing now, allowing violence, passionless and pure, to flow through her.
I'm going to be honest, that description in this context actually sounds more psychotic than if she was in a rage or like Shaak Ti where she was trying to annihilate people, but it was an assassination mission. Hers is just, I'm going to kill people. I don't really care. I'm passionless murder. It actually seems really kind of effed up. And I don't know if that's going to be a lead into the dark side later with other characters, like this actually getting to them, because this is, it didn't feel that way with Shaak Ti. It didn't feel that way with all the other Jedi who were getting into there, because even Anakin, well, he's not a good example, was more passionate in his fighting, even if it was arrogant and then it turned on him. The description of Ayla being passionless and empty while she just does the violence. If they don't talk about how it's disturbing her, that's going into levels of psychotic that I'm actually expecting to break a character later.
She took every opening,
no one else has been described that way.
every lethal current which came to her, and struck at every foe with the intention to kill. What conscious thought she maintained was focused almost entirely on making sure she did not commit to anything too suicidal, holding herself back from accidentally performing any acts so lethal they would take her life as well as the lives of her enemies. This could be hard for her to do, as it had been in the past, and yet, frankly, it wasn't. Not there, not then.
Okay, so it was hard for her not to accidentally herself? I mean, I get the lightsaber could if you do that, but and then Fan contradicted himself by saying it was hard, but also, frankly, it wasn't. Not there and not then. Does she have control issues with the lightsaber?
Everything was in sync within her, and Ayla felt honed like never before, subsumed by neither compassion nor hatred, as she remembered the teachings of her own master and embraced the recklessness which had enabled him to learn Vapad. Though she would not manage to match his own lethal skill on just this rush alone, she was certainly closer than she ever had been.
Sense.
The knowledge she's using was not comforting. All around her was the massive main avenue, her advancing army grinding its way forward at her back, the Imperial menace attempting to impede them at her front. They were desperately trying to halt or slow her forces by any means, forming pockets and bulwarks and using all manner of varied weapons and tactics. Most of these defenses and attempts were pulverized by her artillery support, and when they finally had the good sense to hide in the shadows of the spires, the imps were handed off to her elite vanguard and, of course, the Jedi Master herself. At this rate, they would come within sight of the Imperial Temple in little over 12 minutes, perhaps sooner if nothing unexpected reared itself up before her advance. Ayla was not happy nor sad about her progress. She was simply satisfied.
Yeah, no, they're really hammering home. It's the difference between Ayla and Shaak Ti now and how they're describing it is very obvious here. Like Shaak Ti, she did what she did. She didn't like it. Ayla's like, murder, murder, blood everywhere. Oh, he's dead. Oh, I need to be a little less suicidally reckless, but it's not hard, but it's hard. Yeah, I'm going to be honest. This is way more psychotic than even the actually zealot psychotic Palatine in the last one. Like, you are out crazying an Imperial who's literally chosen because they're psychotic fanatics. And honestly, it's one of the reasons I like the Sisters faction, but still, like, the just sheer dispassion, and she's intentionally being highlighted as dispassionate about multiple times by Fan. That is one of those weird things where when you say someone is something so many times in such a way while showing them doing something that sounds against it, it creates an expectation in the reader that that might not be real. It's like when you say someone is a good person, you say that while they're chopping someone's head off. You don't hear that and think that and know if those thoughts mix. They're clashing right now. Now, if this is Fan intentionally doing it or not, I would think he is, because I would put a little credit into his writing style. I don't think he would unintentionally make those points. He does a lot of things with a lot of buildup way in advance from when things actually come out. So this is definitely something he's highlighting on purpose, that her entire style is reckless and empty of passion, but also, I know the Vapad style. Isn't that what Mace Windu did? I'm not actually sure now that I think about it. I'm pretty sure it is, unless you did a different one. But it's a very much reckless one, if I remember correctly. So the sheer references, though, is definitely make me think something's going to snap. Just what exactly, I'm not sure.
The Imperials had to be stopped, and they were being stopped. General, Sith Trio hold up dead ahead. They've already incinerated Auric's squad. Commander Husk and what's left of his men are either being evac'd or ID'd as we speak.
Ooh.
I'm holding my squad back for now, scouting for a less lethal approach to the targets. Ayla's alien brain brought the name of the commander to her lips without so much as a conscious twitch, easily able to remember every last one of the clones under her command. Good thinking, Captain Graves. Keep out of their reach until I get there. I'll clear them out myself. She radioed back through the comm pin she had placed in her vest. Already, Ayla was orienting, reaching out with her senses and quickly locating the Imperial force wielders which Graves had indicated.
Psykers.
They bent the force in ways she had never conceived of, making the very fabric of it warp and moan in odd, destructive forms.
Accurate.
She followed that foreboding wail, feet kicking with heightened speed and strength as she crossed the battlefield like a speeder. Are you sure you don't want us to cover your approach, General? We can be next to you in seconds if you ping us. Graves sent back. Ayla allowed herself a grim smirk. These will be the 5th, 6th, and 7th Imperial Sith I killed today, Captain.
Okay, so they were saying Sith. I honestly thought I just misheard the first few times. And of course, in the same way that the Imperium is considering the Jedi witches, the Jedi are considering the Psykers Sith because they're making everything seem destructive. Granted, the Jedi did try and drop a bunch of buildings onto an entire column, so they started the, oh my god, what the fuck use of the Force well in advance of everyone else. If you don't count the space battle, which I'm not entirely sure at what point this happens by comparison, even though it happened earlier in the story. Huh. Still, though, this is probably the largest confrontation about base level, not going Psyker Ghost level Psyker. So, I'm wondering how they're basically going to do against a Jedi when it's a 1-on-4, 3? I actually don't know how big the squad of Imperial Sith this is. And yes, that does amuse me in context very much right now.
I think I figured them out, she said. Roger that, General. We'll be on standby to advance after you're done.
These would be the Primaris
and General,
Psykers with the...
said Captain Graves.
Yeah,
yes,
with the
Captain.
army, because they also call them Primaris.
Don't be a
Primaris
stranger.
Marines.
You Jedi can't always pick up all the slack, and we Commandos make house calls. Graves said, some humor
is that an expression?
forcing itself through his normally grim demeanor.
I get what he says, but
Ayla
really?
smiled somewhat. She knew that his effort was the direct result of her own lack of humor, her own grimness. On Graves, it was almost endearing,
though?
especially when one got to know him. On Ayla, it was a sign that something was wrong. Very wrong.
Oh?
She made it a point to seem a little less absorbed in her task, to avoid affecting the morale of her troops. Noted, Graves. Stay...
Okay, so she's aware that when she's in the zone, she sounds robotic, even. It's like shutting down humanity, or I guess sentience, or cognizance. Like, she's aware, but, cognizance doesn't work, or sentience. Just the humanity, like the emotive aspect. Like, highlighting some of the downsides to the light side of the Force that are always hinted at, but never really kind of shown. And every personal opinion, every time someone tries to write about the downsides to the light side, they kind of don't do a good job, ever. Never have you ever seen someone do that well. Except for a few of the games where they just show the laurels being rested on so hard, and maybe the movies, but even then it's kind of iffy at best.
Be ready to cover me if I call, she said. The Jedi leapt the remains of a crashed Imperial gunship, landing atop its nearly skyward pointing tail, and from there, seeing the 3 Graves had spoken of. Bent and ravaged by their bizarre techniques, all but one of the 3 were blinded, and wore blood-streaked rags over their empty sockets.
Damn.
Chains rattled and clinked from where they hung, affixed cruelly to hand and ankle, yet...
Oh, so these are some of the low-level Psykers who probably just avoided going to the Emperor. Yeah.
Hanging free. They were all bald and emaciated, so thin and hairless as to seem sexless, leaving Ayla utterly uncertain as to whether she faced a coven of robed crones or a trio of 3 wailing male sorcerers.
Probably a mix.
Even their voices were distorted, rising and falling in pitch as they cast their power out in reckless waves of fiery destruction.
Yeah.
The 3 held aloft staves which ended in torch-like heads, objects of focus for their flames. All around them, in wide cones and arches, were the sprawled, burned remains of hundreds of the vanguard forces.
Ooh.
The sight of the scorched dead reminded her of her purpose, and the Jedi Master breathed out the emotions building within her, becoming as cool as the color of her skin as she honed herself for battle once more.
Blue skin, yeah.
The very act of preparation seemed to draw the attention of all 3 of the...
Because they're used to feeling presence in Psykers. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to this confrontation because this is low-level Psyker combat. To be completely fair, it is not a librarian. This is not someone who's apparently full-on able to go crazy levels of Psyker like we saw earlier. This is what sounds like people jobbing it, because if they don't, I mean, there's a reason they're literally chained to things.
The Imperial force wielders, and they raised their staves into the air, screaming out wordless chants of hell and flame.
During the Psyker stuff, yeah, it's probably literal hell.
The torches on the ends of their focus staves flared bright. Ayla could feel the wave of their intentions reach her far before any actual heat or flames were birthed into reality. The Jedi's body tensed, coiling as she breathed the force into her muscles and joints, strengthening and propelling them to enable her speed to defy all logic. It was by this speed that she evaded the balls of flame which exploded in her wake, not thrown, but spontaneously generated into existence in places she had been only moments before. She could feel them reaching out for her with their senses, fumbling to catch the cartwheeling form of the Jedi Master as she leapt and evaded another explosion, and then another, drawing nearer and nearer as she approached in an unpredictable zigzag. One reached out with a gnarled, filthy hand, clutching at the air as if to grasp something from on high, while another bent low, pressing their forehead against the steel ground, appearing to enter a state of supplication or prayer.
I mean, probably literally prayer, too.
The ground begin to heat beneath her feet as the air started to hum, as if she had just entered into the mouth of a massive microwave. Spotting the wreckage of a nearby Chimera and the impact crater of a massive shell which had left a deep hole in the avenue, Ayla acted without thought or planning. Her movements and choices a flow of precognitive judgments made more by the Force than by her own thinking mind.
I know that's technically how you're, like, Jedi-wise, letting the Force guide you this level is a good move, but considering how detached she's been described constantly, I keep coming back to this. She's being described in such a way that I'm like, I don't know if this is canon or not. I don't know if this is fans' take or not. I'm assuming he probably did research and saw how she fought because of the style, and this is what it sounds like to be in her perspective, because he seems to have done that with almost everyone else. But damn, is it kind of feeling like she's the baddie on this one because of the entire easy murder? It's like, yeah, again, I'm going back to it. Shakti had emotions during that. She did it, but, you know, Ayla is more like, no, I'm just not going. We're going to, hey, you're dead. Nice, cool. Yeah, moving on. I like this characterization. I just find it really disturbing.
She rode those currents, but barely controlled them. Extending her hand, she ran on, heading towards the APC, seeing that its back-facing troop hatch was wide open and facing
literally taking cover.
She sprinted hard towards it, no longer angling for the Imperials, feeling small blisters and burns already beginning to form across her body, the disfigured touch of their technique bleeding into reality. Ayla had only seconds more, leaping the crater instead of taking cover within it, her back now to the three as she sunk all her effort into this final plan.
She's throwing the tank.
Played plainly across the face of the Jedi Master as she pulled her extended hand back towards her chest, closing it into a fist as she did.
What?
The Chimera lurched and then flew forward, suddenly pulled free of its own wreckage as if yanked by thousands of elastic ropes. She leapt up, spinning around to face the sorcerers once more as the open maw of the Chimera came flying after her. The Jedi...
Oh my god, she just... What Fan is describing is her jumping up and whoop! She's yeeting it. It's not even she just getting down and pushing it. She's literally yeeting it. It's like... How to describe it? Just the best thing I could think of is the scene of... I think it was the first Avengers movie... Loki going, I think the term is limp dick, after Hulk smashes him. You know, I probably could have chosen a better way to phrase that. It's the Hulk smash moment. If you don't know what I'm talking about, it's actually probably on YouTube. There's probably plenty of videos. She basically did that. It's just one smash with the Chimera. Just whoop. The fact that she's jumping up right now, I can see why she mentioned earlier that, I gotta make sure not to do something too suicidal, because I'm not thinking about it, I'm just moving with the Force. Also, not considering maybe the Force doesn't like you, because jumping into the path of people seeing you when not being in cover is a bad idea. Granted, it's the Force, so maybe they weren't aiming there.
By pulling in her arms and legs just as it snatched her out from the air. The arcing trajectory of the flying vehicle husk guided the wreck straight towards her 3 opponents. But she was hardly done, and neither were they. Maws of flame opened above and below the Chimera, dousing it in fire.
She's in it while throwing it.
Closer to the 3. The 2 Imperial Force wielders who had been attacking focused, moving their upward and downward facing columns of flames at pace with the nearing form of the burning Chimera. But even they could sense that they would not manage to destroy it that way, despite being wholly focused on the flying vehicle. This was where the 3rd stepped in, mumbling and babbling obscene words of fire, tongue literally alight. The chained Imperial cupped hands around their burning mouth, and as the Chimera seemed to be about to fly into and crush the 3 of them, the 3rd, sighted Imperial screamed, issuing forth much more than sound with the effort. A wide jet of superheated warp matter blew out of their mouth in an intense cone of thermal obliteration. The Chimera was caught in its entirety, and where it had managed to retain most of its shape and structure under the bathing torrents of flame prior, its armor was revealed to be worthless against the new attack.
Dude, honestly, there's probably someone out there who knows exactly what psychic attack that is. I barely play Psykers. I'm not going to get it, but that sounds cool.
Its body was warped, utterly shredded into glowing slag.
Yeah, I mean, it was already on its last legs.
Blast of heat,
like
which the Imperial was
screaming
into existence. The Chimera's momentum was sapped by the blast almost instantly, and it landed heavily, leaving a glowing smear of ceramite and metal as it came to a grinding halt. Now less than a quarter of its original size.
Damn!
It was so destroyed, in fact, that none of the 3 Imperials had been able to see or define the perfectly cut circular hole in the away-facing position of the Chimera,
she actually
which
did
had been made there by Master Ayla almost the instant she had entered the Chimera.
No, I was right. She was inside of it. I thought I
it
misheard that.
As a distraction and little else. The 2 sorcerers who had failed to kill her
she literally threw herself into an oven for safety.
Hands appreciatively upon the back of the 3rd, who was busy rubbing their burnt lips and spitting out molten fragments of their own teeth. The 3rd smiled in spite of the pain, having no idea that Ayla had not perished within the craft, but had instead cut her way out of the flying APC just as it had passed over the deep crater she had.
Also, I love that Fan is showing that these are not the same level psychers as what we've seen already. These are people who are burning themselves out to get this level of power, like the teeth coming out, the eyes bleeding, the fact that they've done more damage to themselves than Ayla has. I mean, she's about to fix that. And frankly, at this point, it's a mercy, and I don't think that she's intending that. But I love that. I love just that little moment of like the teeth coming out, solving and rubbing off. This is disturbing and grotesque. And the fact that they're just like, yeah, cool. What's up, guys? Patting each other on the back. It really does hammer home, this is different. Because normally you think Psykers, you think not going to do more damage to yourself than not. Short of, Perils of the Warp. And usually that's more demony at this point. And honestly, if they periled here, I don't think there's any demons. Depending on how Fan treats Abeloth, there's very few demons in Star Wars that could really be considered warp-based. So, I don't think he's bringing her in. Let's go with it. In soon. That'd be disturbing. I just really like how they're showing the damage being done. It's a great way to show that when it's not usually something games or most fiction pay attention to. Because when you're at the human level, you're usually with the guard. And that's treated one of 2 ways. Gaunt's Ghost, where it's like really tough and rugged. Or Cyphus Kane, where it's more admittedly amazing. And I personally think it's one of the best ways to do 40k. I'm biased. I'm very biased.
Considered using for cover. They discovered this a second or so later when Ayla's saber burst from the ground beneath them, skewering and slicing away their feet as it spun.
Damn.
The 3 mutilated Force wielders were blown away as she used the Force to push the circle of steel above her directly up and out, jumping up a moment later herself. Around Ayla lay the writhing, cursing forms of the 3, and she wasted no time, jumping into the first and decapitating the Imperial without mercy. She did the same to the second, and intended to do the same to the third, but once more, the sighted third found the strength to act, glaring through bloodshot eyes as power filled them completely. Opening a mouth full of flattened, burnt teeth, the sorcerer repeated the same technique which had been used to destroy the Chimera, firing it directly into her. It was instant death. Or rather, it would have been. But Ayla had figured them out, found their weakness, and had no shame in exploiting it.
They don't seem very fast.
These Imperial Force wielders hated and feared the very force which they used, which flowed through them. She was hesitant to call.
You know, I mean, she's right, but I'm going to side with the Imperials on this one. While in the Star Wars universe, it's a lot safer. A Jedi moving over into the Star Wars side is basically screwed like an Eldar. And I don't mean that in a figurative way. I mean that in the Slaaneshes involved, it's probably more real than it really should be.
Call them Sith, because even the Sith, hateful as they were, did not treat the Force as a serpent, a venomous beast which they sought to use whilst avoiding its fangs themselves.
Yep.
Yes, their techniques were powerful indeed, with a level of brute application Ayla had never seen and could not replicate. But
now that's interesting. Admitting that they're actually brute forcing powers she can't match. Not impossible, but placing herself at this level, though, just because, again, these are the weak Psykers. I don't think there's any Psyker in the game outside of... No, I think Imperial Guard Chimera Psykers are literally as weak as you can get, because I'm not really going to include a Navigator as a Psyker. They're adjacent, but it's different. It's more of a mutation-based one, which Psykers may or may not be, depending on who's writing them.
But she danced and moved with the Force, making it and herself as one, and did not fear it or hate it as they did. Her grasp of this power was pure, trained, and unclouded, and so, for her, it was only a matter of effort to do what she did next. Reaching down with the Force, Ayla found her opponent, specifically the grip they had on the fabric of the Force, and with a gentleness which bordered on kindness, seized the metaphorical wrist of the Sorcerer attempting to exert their influence, and broke it. It was...
That was a very weird description. Opponent, specifically the grip they had on the fabric of the Force.
Her opponent, specifically the grip they had on the fabric of the Force, and with a gentleness which bordered on kindness, seized the metaphorical wrist of the Sorcerer attempting to exert their influence, and broke it.
Yeah, that is really hammering home. Ayla, as fans writing her, is kind of fucked up. I mean... It's what they said earlier. It's like, it's all the passionless, the empty white room in a white void that just happens to have a blood sauce splattering gore everywhere that just slowly gets emptied out. It's kind of like the what the fuck levels of, okay. The way he goes, like, a gentleness when she's talking about how they're brute forcing the Force. She's reserving the emotions for her thoughts about the Force itself, because that's where she seems to be pushing everything out. But that is the one thing that breaks in. And then how she's like, with a gentleness, she snapped the wrist, broke the wrist. That is a tonal shift in just the same sentence. And it does really highlight how she's been described and how her thought process has been conveyed. And yeah, it does really hammer home the idea of, I can see something happening.
It
I
was
don't know,
like
but it's,
breaking straw, and in place of burning gouts of superheated death, the sorcerer beneath her, who was glaring death into her, burped up a shallow draft of warm air and died less than a second later as Ayla neatly snipped off their head.
That would do it.
Her rebuke had been trained to be used against the likes of Ventress and Savage, Sith acolytes who embraced the Force and the dark side of it wholly. Compared to that level of dedication, this act was easy, and several times she had sensed a strange elation from the Imperial she was killing, as if they were grateful to have died, without being fully connected to the Force.
Yeah, and that is a perfectly accurate thing. Here, that's kind of fucked up. In 40K, it makes perfect sense. I like that she's catching on to that, even though she's suppressing all of the emotional impact. Let's go with that. The analytical side is still catching things like they really don't like this, and she's using it to her advantage, but it does highlight how she's picking up what's going on, and I do like that, because this is one of the differences that well, I still think I preferred Shock T's internal monologues because they just had more emotion in them. Ayla is being more analytical and figure out, okay, this is how they're approaching this. It's not something that could be done because Ayla is fighting more normal enemies she can actually beat, as opposed to an enemy who's admittedly pulling out all the stops and holding her own. It's a completely different type of battle. But she's picking up hints that aren't explicit, but are very much a key to the other setting. It's nice to see that. Will she get to the point of why they think that? I don't know, and I think that might be beyond her right now until she really stops to think about it. If she stops to think about it. I don't know. See what happens.
The revelation reminded her in no uncertain terms that the perversions and distortions of this empire were truly without end.
Nope, no, she is not going to think it. That is absolutely clear. She's just attributing to it's a perverse empire. I mean, she's not wrong. But if that's the extent of her thought, she's not going to figure out, oh, yeah, there's other shit. Things usually happen for a reason. Granted, sometimes the reasons are stupid. So yeah, she's not going to think it through.
Ayla was about to call her troopers forward
but
when, without warning, she sensed something and froze. It was just a subtle, soft brush against her senses, a tickle,
assassin?
perhaps even an illusion. But even so, it had, for a brief moment, turned her blood to ice.
Oh?
It had been the dark side, pure, unrestrained, and black as the stretch between voids. Had it been an illusion?
Now, this is interesting. Is this going to be more of chaos corruption or an actual Sith doing something, which would be weird because you think just letting the Jedi kill themselves and against the enemy would be fine. Also, Palpatine's more or less in control, except for some minor players who technically exist, depending on which continuity fan is going with. So is it someone from the Star Wars side or the 40K side going all the way?
She was not sure.
I'm really curious to see what happens.
Being sure was not good enough to ignore it. She signaled the vanguard forward, and then jumped back into the hole she had made, crouching as she found herself once more within the smoking maintenance crawl spaces of the colossal roadway. She used the Force to filter the air and moved swiftly, feet light, as she crouched and ran at once. The Jedi moved back towards the crater she had used to reach these tunnels, and halfway to the breach, she found a hatch that led further down. With a flick of her wrist, she forced it open and jumped through, eschewing the orange ladder left there for her descent. Beneath were some more maintenance access points, and then another hatch which led down into the first set of sub-roads beneath the main avenue, which were massive in their own right. The fighting was also occurring down here, though with less vehicles from both sides. She ignored the battle, moving around the combatants as she made her way lower and lower, following the memory of the sense, the echo it left in her, an echo she was more and more certain had been real and not imagined. She had studied the maps of her approach extensively, and her memory was excellent, so it was...
Yeah, because they've highlighted the memory before, that makes sense. But would the maps have included interior details? I honestly have no idea how good scanning technology is in Star Wars. I literally don't know. If someone could tell me if that's something they can do or not, I'd actually appreciate it, because I'm just actually curious.
It was not long before she began to figure out where this presence had lingered. Security Center Delta Y, one of the many security monitoring rooms which had been used by the civilian government's law enforcement and emergency services before
not the new stuff
the
installed.
invasion. She had suspected most would be abandoned by now, though it made sense that the enemy would select one as a command and control position.
Did they, though?
If they managed to slice their way past the city's security networks and defenses, then they'd have access to countless cameras and sensor devices scattered all across the ongoing battle. The realization only fueled her drive further. Whatever was being done there, it needed to be stopped. She reached the center entrance and found the doors locked.
I'm assuming whatever's
and
the unexpected
unresponsive.
thing is coming now.
It was no matter. Her lightsaber granted her the access she lacked, and
Ah, yes, the lightsaber key card. My favorite. Very effective, and no one really says no at that point.
soon she was inside the small, vaguely dome-like security room. Her eyes, accustomed to the twilight of her homeworld, pierced the dimness with ease, and she saw standing before her 3 figures.
What?
But these 3 were not as the others had been, not at all. One was a many-limbed droid man, robed in red. Its attention...
Oh, so she's going with the Mechanicus now, but how would... Why would a Mechanicus... Magos, whatever, have a force presence? That almost seems like it should be the exact opposite, considering they're literally cutting themselves out.
Focused solely on a nearby console it seemed
Unless it's the other two.
interfacing with. Not far was another robed form, though this one was hunched and contorted, clearly badly malformed beneath its tattered vestments of thick brown sackcloth. And, standing before the two of them, facing away from her...
Okay, just gonna throw it in there. What the fuck, fan? This is actually kind of terrifying. Just like the recessed eyes. The cloak fits well with the entire Jedi thing, but you just barely see the outline of what almost looks like a skeletal face, but you see the eyes just barely highlighted when you focus it on it. This is a fucked up picture. Where did you even get this?
was the tallest and most imposing of the trio. The robe which sheathed this figure was stark black and luxuriously thick. Golden pins, medals, and chains coated its shoulders and sleeves, and the straight-backed posture of its wearer was completely at odds with the uncanny and crooked stances of the other two.
What would this be?
Ayla raised her saber. Halt! This is your one chance. Surrender now. Drop your weapons.
Okay, no, Ayla, You were all murder hobo, completely okay with that. And now you're giving them a chance to surrender. When you literally just got the entire... Apparently her survival instincts are a significant proportion of why she mentioned, I need to make sure not to do something too suicidal. Because she is doing it now! Wasn't expecting that to be the reveal, but it's the reveal.
Or you will all die, she said. The Jedi Master was fully prepared for them to attack her, prepared to dodge back outside the room, prepared to cut her way back in from a different direction. What she was not prepared for was them, all of them, ignoring her utterly. She took another step forward. Now, she insisted. I think she is serious, Master, said.
This isn't the Imperials, is it?
The hunched figure, its voice a gravelly cackle. It crawled a little closer, revealing its mangled arms and hands as it used them ape-like to approach. The skin all across its arms was coated in tattoos and scarred symbols, the sight of which made Ayla sick for no discernible reason.
Oh, that's not a servitor, that is someone corrupted. Imperial sigils don't burn the eye that well, I mean, they can if you're doing any, like, anti-witch stuff, but, this is chaos territory, isn't it? Ah!
Bones jutted like small horns or thorns from around its fingers and knuckles, and it
so
bled
it's confirming
from them,
that
though no blood
populace
actually
surviving
dripped
did
off
have
onto
chaotic
the floor,
taint.
clinging unnaturally to the skin. She moved her saber to face it, but found no need to halt it. That was done by the upraised hand of the central figure, the motion revealing the being's hand and little else.
That'd be a dark
Pale,
Mechanicus
flawless
figure
skin bore the many intricate and ornate rings of the Imperial's long-fingered thin hand. Yet despite their luster and quality, it was the black talon-like nails that tipped each digit which drew eyes the most. Ayla shivered at the...
They're described as very tall. There's no way we got a word bearer here, is there? Nah, that would be a much bigger reveal than this. This is probably just someone who is a cultist more than anything else. Someone with more corruption, maybe even mutation. I don't think it would be a word bearer.
Sight, but held fast as the robed Imperial began to turn around to face
Do the
her,
murder faster.
moving slowly, deliberately. So far as she could tell, none but the droid men were armed, and that red-robed abomination seemed fully occupied by whatever its task was. In spite of this, Ayla could not shake a deep sense of menace which was flooding into the room like a thickening miasma of toxic gas.
Actually, how would that affect chaotic taint? I keep calling it taint. I don't like using this word. I really want to stop, but I keep doing it. But the chaotic effect, there we go. How would a cleaner, less corrupted warp look like? Would they just be able to infect it easier? Or would it actually resist them because the powers literally giving them power aren't there anymore? I mean, they're also trying not to eat them as well, but details.
You will do nothing, said the turning man.
Is it literally doing the hand wave trick?
She and I will reckon. She and I alone.
Okay, I can't understand the accent. Oh, you will do nothing, the man said, turning to the cultist. Okay.
Nothing, said the turning man. She and I will reckon. She and I alone.
Okay, so I'm going to cut this one here mostly because I want to just jump right into this fight between what I'm assuming is a chaos sorcerer. I thought because how tall, that's the word. Hey, I could speak. How tall they were. Maybe like for a second, it's like, is that just like a runt black legionary? Or maybe like a runt. It's probably not a word bearer. They would be bulkier. That would be a much more descriptive moment there. So it's probably just a chaos sorcerer as opposed to the Primaris Psykers that the Empire had, or the Imperium. So I love how we're finally confirming, yeah, chaos is here and they're doing something with either a corrupted or Dark Mechanica Magos. Yeah, I was kind of wondering what would make Ayla think why people were afraid to attach, and I thought, oh, she's never going to think it. And, you know, I'm being proven wrong right now because she's about to have a literal crash course in why the Imperium was afraid of Psykers. Yeah. And again, this is just hyping up that fight that we're eventually going to get to, maybe, between Obi-Wan and all the red shirts and the I was going to say Chaos Librarian, but the Space Wolf Librarian, which I'm really looking forward to. Because fans building up to that. All these little interactions with Psykers and what they do, even this episode alone, going, this is what a Primaris looks like, and she's kind of putting herself on their level, so we have that power level, and we're probably about to get someone a little higher, because this level of bravado does not happen without some awareness. Outside of Imperial politics, where bravado without awareness is literally their entire style of government. Yeah. 40K works despite itself, and because a lot of smart people are pulling the strings. And honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if Zinch is actually propping up the Imperium because he finds it funny as much as he's trying to destroy it, because he plots against himself, and that is actually a thing that happens. Yeah. Is it canon? No. Do I find it funny to think that? Yes, and I'm going to keep doing that. More importantly, I got no idea what's about to happen. I'm assuming I keep wanting to say Magos for some reason, but it's no. The Chaos Sorcerer is going to be the one to survive, because this seems like the reveal of an enemy that I really want to see more about. And if not them, then what they represent. Because I don't think it's just one person. When you got Chaos, you don't just have one chaotic bit of corruption. You have a lot. And there were a lot of Imperials. So Tatooine's fucked, which is what I would say, except it's Tatooine. That's basically a standard day regardless. It sucks so bad already. It's just going to suck worse now. Yeah. It's kind of like driving through New Jersey. and then driving through New Jersey on bad weather. It's going to be New Jersey either way. You don't really have a choice there. I'm a little biased, but I stand my ground on that one. More importantly, if you guys haven't already, there's a link below to the original video. Hit it up, and I'm probably just going to give in and watch the rest of this later today, so I'm just going to do that. Yeah, it'll be fun. I'm looking forward to this so much, but I also have to adult, and I've been talking way too long. I need to go adult 5 minutes ago. Shit. Okay, otherwise, yeah, thanks for watching. I'll see you guys then. Adios.